everyone, and welcome back to This Week in Guns, powered by Second Amendment Foundation and brought to you by Patriot Patch Company, VZ Grips, MAF Corporation, for Patriot's Food, and Primary Arms. This show offers commentary on the latest firearms industry news, information, and buzz. I'm your host, Matthew Rosier, and I'm joined today by the Rat Squadron.
It is us, the Rat Squadron. We're doing evasive maneuvers.
I think that's called the dodge and roll.
Dodge and roll.
Yeah. Anything to get that cheddar.
Indeed.
For you audio listeners, I just actually bit into a block of cheddar. I know that sounds great.
He's committed to the bit.
All right. So, as always, you know, as a rat-based community, we got to have friends, right? So, first up, let's talk about a true drama story in which we were personally involved.
That's true.
Yeah, there's going to be a few bits of our personal involvement. This
one was a series of tubes. The story is very convoluted, and it seems that Mr. James Reeves here has the sort of the definitive scoop. It's probably the end to this arc, to this epic.
So a lot of you guys saw the whole HK did some twittering.
They did indeed do a tweet.
They did a tweet, and it was a big tweet. And there were results to the tweet.
In fact, there was a resulting result of the tweeting.
So the title here, "The True Story of the H&K Social Media Girl." And then we have this image: HK does not engage in identity politics. A policy was violated. Changes were made. So yeah, and the tweet was taken down, but it was basically a anti-gun bunny tweet. But, you know, in the guise of this is taking advantage of women or objectifying them or whatever. I don't know. What was your take on it? Because you reacted to it first after actually reading it.
Right. It was sort of a weird thing. So I guess like the story I think makes most sense going sort of backwards to forwards, where you know, maybe not quite backwards to forwards, but, you know, for context, HK as a company sort of has this reputation of making expensive guns and then not selling them even though they're expensive.
Right.
And so they sort of laid into that image, you know, before the pandemic and stuff. They had a social media person who became the HK social media girl, who would be like, haha, you're poor and we won't sell you these guns because we don't like you. And you know, everybody sort of latched onto that, and then eventually the HK social media account stopped really responding to people like that, and people were like disappointed because the HK bully social media account went away. But you know, since then HK's social media has been sort of normal, and then like out of nowhere they interject themselves into this whole Miller Lite. I think it was Miller Lite, Bud Light. The beer needs to be identity politics now is the most important thing. Like they've run out of beer they can sell, and instead they deal in identity politics now. It's a much more lucrative market where you only stand to lose. Yeah. And so HK decided, like, that's a really good business venture. We could only stand to lose by jumping in here too. So it turns out HK evidently contracted out their social media and marketing, which to me is a really weird move, especially if you're a gun company,
especially a gun company that had such an acute reputation for you know, aggressive social media takes.
Right, like if you need somebody who gets it to do a good job of it, and contracting out like almost immediately kills your chance of somebody getting it. Like that's like you're just going to get corporatized, heavily watered down stuff, except for in the weird instances whenever the person that you're contracting out decides that today is their day to use the company social media account to interject their own personal beliefs.
And so let's take a look at that here.
It was a heck of a thing.
So yeah, and again, this is in response to the beer corporation, whatever, something.
The beer corporation saying objectifying women for selling beer is bad. Which and HK sort of came out and said, yes, we agree. Like, you know.
Well, yeah, I'll just read it. I've got the original one up here. So, so somebody, you know, complained and said that was too woke. And so here HK says, wow, woke? Allow me to translate. Objectifying women was never a good marketing strategy. In the firearms industry, that was prominent strategy up until recently. Many industries have done that, including beer corps. I like the sound of that, beer corps. As an actual woman typing this, I'll use more words for you to comprehend. Using bunnies to sell products is trash marketing. Supporting women by not doing that is good. Just kind of circular logic, but now to address the rest, non-bikini parts of the ad. Seems like they should have given sources for the info they're throwing out, and for them to isolate a huge number of their target consumer base makes no sense, and their virtue signaling ad doesn't even make me want to drink their beer, but at least they use actually women for it, presumably. So
it's weird because I sort of already touched on it, but like the best tweet I saw about it was from Lee over on Twitter. Lee, everybody knows Lee on Twitter. Yeah. But he had a take that was essentially like, this is one of those times where if you say nothing could possibly go wrong. But no matter what you say, it will only feed people who are they're just like chomping at the bit to be outraged by it. Right. And HK took it wasn't HK, right? We've been over it. Wasn't HK, but this media marketing person, right? At the end of the day, contract or not, their job is to make people want to buy a company's products. They thought like the middle ground that they'd toe is upset the people who like booba advertising while also upsetting, whatever this second wave gun culture is that identifies with trans people being people. And you're going to draw this line between real women and fake women, which is just like, it's such an insane, like they're trying to take shots at everybody in an instance where no one will come to their defense.
Yeah. Which was funny. And as for our involvement, you read the ad,
right?
And you said, she hates gun bunnies because they're degrading to women. I hate gun bunnies because they're degrading to guns. We can be friends, I guess. Which was a good tweet. The tweet did good. I decided because I just heard this from you, and I was like, "Oh, I'm in." So wanting to start trouble, I wrote, "WTF? I love HK now," which was a lie. Not because of any of this, because I actually don't like their guns. Sorry.
They haven't made my best tweet of that day was me pointing out they haven't made a good gun since the last Nazi on their team died.
No, they haven't, and even then they had never designed those guns. They had never designed a good gun.
The MP5 borrows from the set me, but
heavily. Okay, so
still designed by Nazis.
A good gun. That is an open question.
I think yes. Well, for its mechanism, yes. The gun overall, way ahead of its time. Modern day, no.
It's an open question. In my personal opinion, I like the MP5, but I want to be edgy and make people do little comments. So I'd rather take the hardline position.
Oh, if you paid $3,500 for one, it's kind of a piece of shit.
But. Oh no, at virtually any price. I mean, even the price of the Turkish built ones, which are not clones, by the way, they went and put their ancient machinery. It's still too much money. It's entirely too much money, and they don't kick that much less than a blowback gun. So I don't think it's good.
Heresy.
Am I wrong?
Like if it's open bolt blowback gun,
if it's open bolt blowback gun, it's actually worse,
right?
But if it's and this is a really deep technical thing. Yes, you can notice the difference of the delay, but is it enough difference to justify the cost and complexity? No, that's my stance on it anyway. But hey, whatever. Anyway, so what I wrote, not having read the tweet, was, I love HK now. Gun buddy marketing is trash. And if HK deciding not to pay random vagina owners to pose with guns bother you, please state your height and IQ for the record. And I didn't know the context of this. So and some of the words that I used there, which I was intentionally just to be prodding, apparently made people
were getting upset. Yeah.
They were like, what do you mean? What is all this inclusive language? I'm like, oh. Whoops. So after I knew that, I came back and said, slight correction on my earlier opinion. I didn't actually read HK's tweet and just wanted to cause trouble. HK is a trash company that has never once designed a good gun. They have made some good guns. I still hate gun buddy marketing and will take any opportunity to fuel a gun buddy garbage fire. Thanks. So I was just glad to see how this this just really went up in flames, and I think that's great.
Right. And like, the deeper point here that getting back to my take that it's degrading to guns, that's sort of tongue in cheek, but also sort of not, where Othnius has this saying, Othnius of Sea and Arsenal, the wise man that he is, has this saying, and it goes something like Star Wars, Calvin, and Hobbes.
Yeah.
And it's something that he says anytime, like Star Wars is cool. You can really like Star Wars. Calvin and Hobbes is cool. I've read every single Calvin and Hobbes comic strip ever. I have the entire compendium, read every single one of them. I would not go to a Star Wars, Calvin, and Hobbes convention because that would be weird. Like, I like ice cream, right?
Right.
I also like gasoline. I like how it smells. I don't want gasoline on my ice cream.
Right. And you don't want gasoline flavored ice cream.
Right.
And so that's...
Boobas are nice.
Yeah,
Guns
they
are nice. I don't want them together. It's
right.
It ends up being like, at least to me, Star Wars, Calvin, and Hobbes, and it either degrades one or the other. Like it puts one or the other on a sort of pedestal where, like, I don't see guns as sexually gratifying objects, and or I don't see boobas as it's not something tokenized to that extent. It's not like a gun where it's something that you should want to go out and buy.
Right. So, and my issue with that type of marketing is, people say, well, everybody knows it's mostly men who buy the guns, and so you may as well match it with like chicken wings and boobs or whatever. But the issue I have with it there, it does go along with the Star Wars Calvin and Hobbes thing, right? Oh, well, this is a big cross-section of our market, so let's put them together without any regard for whether they go together or not.
Right.
And what it suggests to me is that you think your customer base is that simple. Like, it just kind of feels slightly insulting.
And then the sad thing, though, is that at the end of the day, in large swaths, it does end up working to some extent.
It does.
There's a target audience that loves that, and I'm not saying that you're like a bad person for liking that, but I will say that you're falling right for their little low IQ advertising trap. Right. So make of that what you will. But
the thing is, it allows them not to focus on the product itself.
Correct. Like to some extent, there is certainly a silent admission that we don't think our product will sell on its own. Yeah. But we'll sell our product, and here's a lady wearing a swimwear. Now you want to buy a gun?
Product. Yes. Would you purchase this gun? Perhaps if you purchase this gun, this woman will talk to you.
Probably only if you purchase this gun and then do something with it. But whatever.
Who's to say? Who's to say? But yeah, but the interesting fallout here is that, and I remember seeing this in the comments, everybody blamed Angela Harris, who has worked with HK for a long time, on the tweet. And apparently it had nothing to do with her.
Yeah, so it was a contracted social media person
that was immediately discharged.
So I am aware of who sort of blew the whistle first and like fingered this Angela lady who had nothing to do with this entire thing. And eventually the usual sort of internet stupidity happened where she's harassed and death threatened, and people were trying to dox her and all sorts of awfulness they're directing her way for something she had actually nothing at all to do with. And and in fact, like in her own personal life, she's done bikini modeling and stuff, or like female physique contests in which you wear a bikini. Yeah, I don't know what the word for that
woman is. Or whatever.
I don't know what the words for that are because I don't care. But it was she drew all sorts of hatred for this, and it was like pretty obvious she wasn't the one.
Yeah, because it does not comport with her style at all.
and then it's the problem there is she certainly has some amount of a case, and James Reeves estimates she's not the kind of person who would be vindictive about it, but she certainly has a very strong defamation case ready, because I'm aware of who sort of started, at least who like blew up the idea that she was responsible, and by no means did they have any proof of it.
Defamation would be hard to go for it, right? You have to have knowledge that it's untrue. And where you've got this kind of limited pool, I think it's just an unfortunate situation for Angela. But The thing is, everybody knows the truth now because the actual person like went on Twitter and asked for an apology, which is fine. See right there. Eh? No, there it is. So, but yeah, the whole thing was interesting. It was a fun fire to watch. I'm glad we got to play.
Yeah, it was another day of bullying a company, and it's nice whenever it's HK because fuck them.
Oh, but speaking of, I would just like to bully somebody on Twitter just for a moment. This person, he's got 1 million Twitter birds, and he is wrong. So can we just put this up? Mr. Cernovich said
this was wrong.
The Sig Sauer P320 is still the finest semi-automatic handgun in mass production.
Imagine tweeting that on any day but April 1st.
Yeah, this was May 16th, boys. So it's a bit wrong. So I had to come in, do a little correction here. I agree, except for the fact that you spelled Draco really weird.
Like literally anything but the 320.
Like
anything. Like if you said it was the Raven B25, I'd be like, dang, that's big.
No, I'd be like, that's a big opinion, and I'm gonna sit here and rationalize ways that you're right. I've already started doing it in my head.
You say that you say Sig anything and you're in hot water. If you like the actual Sig P250 though, I'm like, okay, at least it's a nice gun. It's expensive anyway.
Or you mean the 210?
210? Yeah, the expensive
yeah, the 210s though that are made in New Hampshire are dog garbage.
Yeah, not one of those. But like any Sig that was designed or manufactured in the United States, dude, I hate to tell you, but
sorry, Charlie. It's junk.
It's sure not the best or the finest.
The neat thing about the 210 is that that design bizarrely started its life as a French service sidearm.
Right.
In 765. And then the Swiss are like, can we have that back? And we're going to fix it and scale it up 20%. So that was good. But yeah, no. So just for, I don't know, the sake of engagement, what would you say is the finest self-loading handgun currently in production?
Oh, you'd have to. I mean, currently in production, my knowledge of production guns is so bad.
Same.
So like, there's the obvious meme answer, but it's also not a meme at all. I'm dead serious. The Draco, but
that's true.
As far as like a carry gun, I'm still so partial to Glocks, and I can't shake it, despite the fact that like their triggers are bad, and it's so cliche, but it's so hard to go wrong with, and there are so many options to make it better suit you, however it is that you want to be suited. And I could very easily tell you which ones aren't right. Maybe this is just my pessimistic mind, but picking the one that I think is best, especially of new guns, like it's so tricky. What I've already convinced myself that the Rock Island 5.0 is the one once they make it in 22 TCM. Once they have a 22 TCM version of the RIA 5.0, that's going to be the best gun ever. I've decided.
All right, that's fair. For me, and I only have a few months left to say this, it's going to be the Walther P99.
Yeah.
So and of course they're almost done producing them, which is sad.
It is kind of stupid how nice they actually do.
Yes, the P99 does different. It really does different. So it's just always been my favorite gun. That's the one gun that I've actually like centered on. As far as whenever I go and compete, the only thing I have on my pistol belt is a P99 holster and like P99 mags and stuff. I shoot the living daylights out of them, and they run with everything. And the single action trigger, say nothing of the fact that you get a decocker and a double action on a striker gun. That's neat. No one ever uses it, but it's neat. But that single action trigger is just stupid clean. And the reset is like 1 point something millimeters. It's ridiculous.
Right. The couple times I carried the printed frame Walther, just like doing little stuff around town or whatever, I did use the decocker because I was like, holy shit, this is actually really, really smart to have on here for a carry gun where you get the reliability benefits of striker, but it's also got your 12-pound initial trigger pull that is at least something of a peace of mind in a gun that doesn't have a manual safety.
Right. Yeah, I think that's wonderful. I'm blown away that there are are no other guns that are doing that.
Nobody's
such a good idea.
Like nobody's imitated it, and despite that, the P99s are still uncommon. And it's not. I mean, they are more expensive than a Glock, and that's probably where they went wrong. But
only a slightly.
Right, but then to counter my own point, 320s are more expensive than Glocks, and they are dog shit. They're so bad.
They're so bad.
My buddy bought an M17 because he's like, well, I just want to get it because the military's using them now. He wanted to get one of the overrun guns or whatever. And I mean, every time we go shoot together, he brings it, and he can't shoot super great with it just because he's relatively inexperienced with handguns, but. Like I have to tell you, its trigger is not better than a Glock's. Its height over bore makes it, it is a compact handgun that snaps like crazy, right. And it's got that long slide travel and the high height over bore, so it feels like a Glock 17. Like the gun never stops moving, and it never stops moving the whole time you're shooting it.
I bought one of the overrun guns. I have an M17. I hate it.
It's a bad gun.
Just hate it. I mean, it's one of those things where it's like, as a collector, I'm like, will I be mad at myself later when I can't have it? I'll just have it.
All right.
And I shot it once, and I'm like, ow.
It's not the best.
This sucks.
And right now I can actually hear them in the future, the copers in the cope section down below saying, my 320 is a bad gun. What do you mean it's got a bad trigger? No, what you need to do is you need to get the expert model, and you need to get this trigger, and you need to put this thing I implore you to get a real gun and stop making excuses.
Yeah, no, it's like if your gun develops a serviceable trigger after you've thrown $500 of upgrades at it, it's because the gun was bad.
Yes.
It's because it was a bad gun. You could buy a whole P99 for the price of the upgrades. Which is a good gun as it comes.
It's a nice gun.
A nice gun. So, and actually, the 2 carry guns I bounce back and forth between. It confirms our bias. A Glock 43X and the Walther PDP F series.
Right.
Those are my 2 carry guns that I see them on the desk, and depending on how I feel, I grab one of those.
What matches my outfit better?
Well, it's basically like. It's more so if I'm wearing something a little tighter fitting, I pick the Glock. And if I'm wearing something very svelte, I pick my PPK. I have
a shield for pocket carry, and it's just so nice because it's so light, and those guns are so ridiculously small. Oh yeah. And then the frustrating thing is we're so off on this tangent. The frustrating thing for me about the shield is I was told to hate them, and everybody's like, it's the worst version of the Glock 43, and just get a Glock 43. And then I built this shield on a printed frame, and I got the parts kit for like $80 or whatever. Right. So I figured this would be like a junk gun that I'd make fun of and make videos of throwing it and abusing it. And then I go to shoot the thing, and I'm like, I'm running the steel at 25 yards, and I'm like, that's really weird for a subcompact. So I scoot back to 50 yards, and I'm running the steel, and this thing's a 40, and I'm running the steel just ding, 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 and I'm like, oh my god,
yeah,
this gun fits me perfectly. It's terrible.
Yeah, I have a Shield Easy.
Yeah.
In 30 Super Carry, and I only bought it because I wanted something in 30 Super Carry.
Right.
And I have been tempted to carry that gun. I've never actually done it, but because it was so stupid to come out with that gun in 30 Super Carry and not make it double stack, because it would have been exactly as thick as the 9mm.
Right.
But anyway, let's finally move on now from this massive tangent. So there was a report of an active shooting at a school. But it was not the heartland of active shooting incidents. It was a policeman who had an accident.
Oh man, I so badly want that. Is it bad that I want this to be a 320?
Oh,
this 320 just went off.
Can we find out? Wait, hold on. But so yeah, St. John's student David Kane was sitting in math class on Monday when suddenly, over the school announcements, students were told there were reports of an active shooter on campus. She just sounded very shaky and scared, and that was kind of it. So we just barricaded the classroom door, Kane said of the next step students and school staff took to stay safe. However, there were no threats identified after several sweeps of St. John's Prep in Danvers amid an investigation into a report of a person with a gun on campus Monday. And that's because
there's a person with a gun is a cop.
Yeah, that's because, the Danvers police and the school superintendent gave an update just after 4 p.m. saying an officer's gun accidentally went off which elevated the situation from a swatting response to an actual active shooter situation. I love how they say this. We're aware of a single accidental discharge of a firearm by a responding officer. It's like whenever somebody does something, it's like, oh yeah, he fired the weapon while whatever being careful or whatever. Right. But then when they're talking about their own, it's, oh no, the firearm discharged.
Yeah, on its own, very mysteriously, the officer was doing the good conduct.
Yeah, several dozen troopers and police responded to St. John's. Immediate entry was made and no threats were identified at this time. Well, hey, at least they actually did go in.
Yeah.
Oh my God. But yeah.
I didn't enter immediately not to shoot my gun. Bang! This was an accident.
Oh my God. But so yeah, thank God everyone is okay. But I do want to find out. We'll look into what the standard Danvers County sidearm is. Because yeah, if it is a Fit 320, it is possible that the gun just discharged.
Sometimes they do that. I don't know.
Yeah, they love doing that.
320 guys straight to the cope section going, no, they don't do that.
Yeah, no, 320 guys straight into the cope men saying, no, not after the second generation Mark III change.
But the second stealth update, third iteration, fourth generation Type 2B revision 4, they stopped it.
You need to pull your slide off and check and see the color of the mainspring. See if maybe then you have a good gun. It's a spoiler alert, you don't. All right. So, but you know what will prevent this from happening? Any type of accidental discharge like that.
VZ grips.
VZ grips. That's right. Because they don't make a grip for the 320. So if you have VZ grips on your handgun and are not a police officer, it is increased. It is a +3 to negligent discharge resistance. It's a really great thing to have around. You don't want to leave home without it. Of course, you guys remember the promotional code is this week 15 THISWEEK15. You're going to get 15% off your order. Let's pick out a good gun. Oh, they updated their website a little bit, make it a little easier on us. Oh, let's look here and pick out a good gun and just showcase a grip. All right, a good gun, 1911 Beretta.
SAR P8. Is that if I had to guess, SAR P8/2000. Is that SAR P8? Is it a CZ75 clone of some sort? I'm not familiar with that.
Why can't I see that?
You went over it. It's in your row down 3.
Oh, neat. Okay. Oh, that's one of them. Isn't they Turkish?
Or Tanfoglios.
Oh, is it Tanfoglio? So it's Italian.
It looks like a Tanfoglio.
No, made in Turkey. But whatever. Nice. Hey, they got, look, that's the Cayenne Brown. That's the dirty olive.
It's at least got the CZ75 inverted rail thing going on, which is so weird.
I have shot one of these. They're okay. And if you've got one of them, you can make it slightly more okay. I do think that the dirty olive would, or the black gray, would look pretty mean in cash money on a CZ75.
With the stainless.
On the stainless.
Yeah, on the stainless steel, that would be pretty big.
But yeah, $75, you get 15% off. That's at least $100 off, guys. So check out the Web Zone. Use promotional code this week 15. And remember, if you want Anime Girl on it, send me a message. I could do it. Just get one in a light color. All right. Maybe don't bother them about it anymore. But, all right, yeah, guys. VZGrips.com, Florida company, supporter of the show. Support them, buy the grip, protect yourself from negligent discharges. Last week, we talked about people talking about the Supreme Court shadow docket case. This is going to destroy all of the assault weapons bans, which, we're actually going to be talking about this a little more later on. But spoiler alert, it's not actually what was happening.
Not quite.
But yeah, later on, we're going to cover this a little bit more. I just wanted to point out this article on the Reload by Gutowski, who has just been extended a formal invite to talk on the show. Look, they didn't take it, and it's not that big of a deal, and it would be really unusual. And despite all that, of course, there were many gun tubers,
there was a lot of people who like massively stoked and of course this is something that's gone on forever, so it's not like a new thing or just this case, but there's gun tubers who will like almost huff each other's farts to an extent, where it's like they're like, Supreme Court's gonna knock down all the assault weapons bans ever, and then they all like sort of build their video and then like hope post to the point that they convince people that it's very likely and it's just around the corner, when like the whole time it was always super unlikely. And maybe like the one glimmer of hopium that they should have been selling to people is the fact that the state was scared to death that this was going to be picked up by the Supreme Court.
Right.
And so the state in the Seventh Circuit, issued a letter about an expedited schedule for this motion for, I think it's a motion for an injunction pending appeal. Mm-hmm. And the expedited schedule is like the whole thing is going to be done a month from now. Like June 29th is oral arguments, which is massively faster than anything. Nothing happens that fast in course of appeal. Never happens. So certainly the Seventh Circuit sort of thought maybe the Supreme Court would take it, but it was always pretty darn unlikely. And you did as one lawyer, one law lizard on Twitter put it. The great thing about having a Supreme Court that wants to stick to text history and tradition is they usually get it right. The bad thing about having a Supreme Court that sticks to text history tradition is they're not going to take cases out of turn. They will not do that. They are loath to step in because what does text history and tradition tell us about stepping in? They shouldn't.
Well, anyway,
traditionally speaking, it's very uncommon that they do.
Anyway. There are some mistakes in there. But yeah, like I said, we'll hammer down on that a little bit more towards the end of the show, but it was a big one, so I wanted to touch it from both ends there. So next up, there is the PRC pistol brace case. Yeah. And we have here this is the government's response for motion for injunction pending appeal, right?
Yeah, so the pistol brace stuff is heating up because we're drawing very close to the deadline, as it were, when ATF
the end of the month, guys.
Right, and so it's drawn pretty close here, and there's certainly some other cases that are still pending appeal at the district level. But only one case has had a judge talk to the initial motion for preliminary injunction. Initial preliminary injunction, isn't that funny? Yeah. That's something I just made up. But
well. So none of these cases have proceeded in any substantial way.
Right.
What's important to note here?
It's all preliminary injunction stuff. So they haven't really argued merits.
And preliminary injunctions are extraordinary relief.
Right.
So just remember that. And not that I don't think that this case is due a preliminary injunction. It is, but it's kind of natural that this fighting is happening.
Right. Don't get deflated whenever it's like the judge that you think would be on your side for a preliminary injunction isn't, because judges are meant to find any reason not to. Right. Like, maybe they won't come right out and say that, but that's how it works. Is they're looking for any reason, anything that they can do to duck out of giving you an MPI. So there's only been one case that ruled on the MPI. They ruled very, very strong. Like they weren't looking for just one thing. They found every reason not to grant an MPI. Right. Perhaps setting it up to streamline it to the circuit court, but that may be hopium and too much reading between lines on my part.
That's too much reading. It doesn't affect the scheduling at all. I think it's possible that one of these cases will get it granted. Maybe it'll be mine. I don't know, but we're gonna try. But the important thing is that it's kind of signaling to the court is like, look, we've only got a couple weeks before ATF has the potential to start taking criminal enforcement action.
This is the last chance to maintain that status quo that MPIs are sort of meant to exist for.
Right. And that's not to say that you can't you still have that argument after it goes into effect, because the status quo did exist for a long period of time. So it's not that it's not like do or die time on the whole lawsuit, but it is an important milestone. And so the government's response is so like it's so one hand not watching what the other is doing. It's kind of out of control. It doesn't really seem like damage control. It seems like wild flailing. So like the government said here that the Second Amendment extends only to instruments that constitute bearable arms, meaning weapons of offense, armor, or defense. And laws that regulate the use of firearm accessories or attachments, therefore, do not implicate the Second Amendment.
They didn't, like in the rule, they say about 15 times, they're not regulating the accessories or attachments. They're specifically regulating the gun
with
itself.
The attachment. Yeah.
They're regulating a gun, which is a bearable arm.
And they bring up one case that, like, a pre-Bruin case, mind, that says because a silencer is an accessory and not a firearm, therefore it's not protected. It's like, okay, one, there's no basis for that, and there's been plenty of other cases that have found that all accoutrement of arms are arms, which is the right way to read it and is historically consistent with the usage of the term. But yeah, they're saying a stabilizing brace is not a weapon in itself. Thus, regulations affecting the use of braces do not implicate conduct covered in the Second Amendment text. Whereas the rule says we have no authority to regulate braces.
Right.
Like this isn't about us regulating braces. We're regulating the firearm with the brace attached.
And this will be a theme throughout this segment. So there's one like blatant on its face contradiction that the ATF is making here.
Well, and then ATF goes on to say that short-barreled rifles are dangerous and unusual weapons.
Which, okay, that's kind of a stretch, but then the real head scratcher there is they say that there is no court case that has found that SBRs are of a sufficient number that they would be described as in common use. But then we stop and look at Caetano, which said that 200,000 stun guns. Right. I mean, stun guns are in common use for lawful purposes. Right. So first off, as it stands, right, there are more than 200,000 SBRs in the country, certainly. Mm-hmm. But the ATF more than
200,000 registered machine guns.
Right. But the ATF is contending here that every single braced pistol is and always has been an SBR.
Right. And the estimate is what is it? Like 4 million or something like that?
The lowest estimate is 2 million people with these things, but that
was their estimate, and then the CRS estimate was
the congressional research thing said that there's 40 million braces on their own. Right. So you can probably say at least conservative estimate there's at least 20 million firearms with braces on them. Yeah.
So.
Of course the government does the classic thing where they try and make dangerous and unusual something that Heller didn't say that it was, where they try and make dangerous and unusual step one, where it's like if a gun's dangerous and unusual then it's immediately banned, which isn't
and here said. So like pump the brakes, this whole dangerous and unusual thing, people are always like talking about say, oh well, it's dangerous and unusual, like they're holding 4 aces.
That's not what Heller said.
So, one, Heller didn't have a standard. Okay, Heller didn't have a standard, and it was virtually all dicta. 2, Bruin said historically analogous regulations. Okay, and so the reason they're talking about dangerous and unusual, that's a reference to the Statute of Northampton, which regulated and did exist in the early colonial era, and it regulated the carrying of dangerous and unusual weapons in such a manner as would necessarily cause terror.
Which that doesn't quite certainly different.
Yeah, that's certainly not saying if it's a rare gun, right? And then how do you quantify that? Because it's insane. How could you possibly quantify a quantity of a type of firearm? And then how do you quantify the type? What is the principal distinction between a 16-inch AR-15 and one with a 14.5-inch barrel? Unlike the distinction between a 20-inch AR-15 and an 11-inch AR-15, where one is clearly stupid, right? But there's no principal distinction between the two. Right. Somebody shooting a can, right, with their 10-inch gun versus shooting a can with their 20-inch gun is shooting a can. Right. It doesn't track, and that's why the whole dangerous and unusual thing makes no sense. So we've got justice attorneys saying this insane garbage in their pleadings. Then you've got ATF saying something insane but significantly less insane than this in its own rulemaking, which is the subject of this litigation, and then you've got the ATF's director going in front of Congress and saying something entirely different.
Yeah, so ATF just today, the 22nd at time of filming, or 23rd for our East Coast friend here, 23rd. So the director of the ATF went before Congress and said that in order for somebody to be compliant with this new rule, all they have to do is take the brace off the firearm, and that's it. Oh, you're fine. You're compliant. Meanwhile, in every court case, in the rule itself, and in their sort of announcements and in their guidance following the rule, the ATF has said you have to take the brace off and either give the brace to the ATF, destroy it, render it incompatible, crush it up, grind it, put it in your breakfast food, eat it. They've said that you can't possibly keep it, which is strange because this sort of harkens back to a case that the ATF very famously lost, where Thompson Contender is a little single shotgun that's highly configurable, lots of different calibers you can have on one frame. You can have it with a stock or not. But Thompson Center would sell you a case that had a gun, which had a stock, and it had the frame for this gun. And then it would
that's actually important. It was a handgun.
Right.
So the way it came was it was a handgun with, it's called 8-inch barrel. And then it included a 16-inch barrel and a stock.
Right.
Right. So go on.
And so ATF contended that this package on its own wasn't a short-barreled rifle because it could be configured that way, right? You could put it together and all the parts are in one box.
They determined it was a short-barrel rifle.
And people certainly owe some debt of gratitude to Thompson, the firearms company, because they went and fought this. They were like, no, that doesn't make sense. And they beat the ATF in court and got a court to agree that just because you have all the parts in a box doesn't mean that you're putting them together would be that way.
Right.
And of course, the big ramification there is if you have a stocked AR-15 lower and you have it in the same gun safe with just like a spare pistol upper, if ATF had their way, that would be an SBR. Your gun safe, the things being in some proximity to each other, it clearly has to be an SBR to the ATF. And they're trying to like raise that from the grave here with the braces, where it's like, because the brace was once on the gun and because you could put it back on. Well, clearly it's an SBR. It's what you're trying to do there, which is insane.
Right. And also, interestingly, that like in the past, once you had it in an unlawful configuration, you couldn't cure it by reconfiguring it.
Right.
With some very interesting exceptions, but now they're saying, it was magically always unlawful, but also magically, if you reconfigure it, it's okay. And they're not saying it's okay. They're saying like, we won't eat you, but that kind of underlines the absurdity of the whole thing.
They're painting so far outside the lines on this one. Like it actually beggars belief.
That's a trigger for me right now.
they're so far out in left field with because they know, right? They've held in the past that it's an incurable sort of situation, and now they're saying that actually you can cure it by if you just take it off and then you crush up the brace real good, then it's cured. But like they can't not contradict themselves 100 times, because as weird as it seems to think about, the ATF's positions on pistol braces, their first 2 or 3 flip-flops where is it okay if you shoulder it? All of those rulings had been more or less consistent with all of the other stuff the ATF has ever said. And as this pistol brace rule that it's not just rolling back stuff the ATF has said since pistol brace existed.
Right.
It relies on them rolling back stuff they've said since the 60s.
Right.
Where it's all a bunch of like,
which is the new coup de grace.
Right.
Well, speaking of all that, and guys, again, end of the month is when you've got until. So if you want to do the register, whatever, you want to do it, that's great. But we have a sponsor. It's MAF Corporation. MAF Corporation has many things. You guys have been going out. You've been buying the apparel. MAF appreciates that. Appreciates the purchase of the Magic ATF ball. But there's a cool product that's relevant to what we're saying. If you got to put a serial number into something, you could do with this. You got to put it in such a way that it's permanent. Heat set it in. Make sure the plastic globs over the edge. But there's an option here. You can put your serials number or whatever it is for 15 dongles. You get the thing. It's great. Look at that. And it's designed to go into the plastic. That's nice.
You could use a soldering iron or whatever else and melt it in there. And then,
redacted because duh.
And then you can have your short barrel rifle. And so long as the thing is free, and so long as you live in a state that allows it, I know we've talked about this before, but people are trying to say like you're giving them what they want, but you're not really. What you're doing is, you're taking advantage of a loophole that may end up closing or may end up having something happen to it, but otherwise it is free SBRs. So,
right. So whatever. Yeah. Cool.
The worst thing that happens is like, everybody ends up in the same boat where the ATF loses in court in such a manner that like the fact that these things are uncurable under the way that ATF thinks the law works normally, like they get stuck to that. And so you're in the same boat as everybody else. And all you did was like maybe waste some time typing in numbers on the computer number machine. But
yeah, like I don't want to tell people to do it when they do whatever they want.
Yeah,
I don't care.
Have
just
fun.
If you're gonna go give money to MAF and use promotional code FRN when you do give the money, because that way you get a little less money.
If you buy a magic ATF ball, that actually legally keeps you safe from any gun crimes. Maybe.
So there's a business I'm involved in. Just had the inspection meeting with the ATF, and I did give the IOI a magic ATF ball, and they were very appreciative and entertained by it. I was like, we were talking, kind of joking. I'm like, okay, I think you're cool. Can I give you a toy? It's just like, I'm not asking for anything. Can I give you something?
Just something that integrates your existence as a human being. Okay? Would it be okay if I treated you like the trash that you are?
No, they were really sweet. They were cool. But anyway, next up, a really cool thing. Lawsuits roll in as Maryland passes sweeping gun carry restrictions. This is another piece by Herr Gutowski. And as you know, Maryland, they did what they basically call the Bruin response bill, where they're like, it's wild. They're saying like basically everywhere is a sensitive place. It's so much worse than the lawsuit that they had already just lost, which is a bold strategy. Governor Westmore said that the bill strengthened common sense gun laws, which
that's what it does.
Yeah, and at the signing ceremony, which is the thing that still happens. Lieutenant Governor Aruna Miller argued that these restrictions will keep Marylanders, particularly children, safe from gun violence.
Will they?
Yeah. Now, I think that is a very point that she made.
It's one of the points of. It's not even one of the points of all time. It's just one of the points.
Right. So immediately afterwards, a couple lawsuits went in, and I am very proud to say that I am involved with one of them. Again, you guys have heard me talking about Maryland shall issue before. They asked for help with this lawsuit, and I was just ecstatic. These guys are... Maryland is a state where a lot of this stuff gets tested because it's in a fascinating political situation where they can move fast with their gun laws, but like the government's in this bizarre position where it has to be respectful of the gun rights group, of basically MSI, because MSI is so like respected there because of how aggressive and factual and like professional and scalpel like the legal action is. So it was a huge honor to get to sign on to this this lawsuit, and this is going to be big. Straight up, it's a Bruin response bill. So what are we arguing? Bruin, right? Oh, Bruin. Quite obviously, like, it's ridiculous. We've got a statement from Alan over at SAF, who's also involved. Instead of trying to comply with the new guidelines set down in Bruin, Maryland lawmakers scrambled to make gun laws more restrictive than they were before. Indeed, the additional restrictions make it nearly impossible to legally carry firearms for personal protection, even on public land. This is government regulation at its worst. And so, yeah, it's super cool. It's very clear there's no well-established historical basis for any of this. Yep. The historical basis is Bruin said we can't, so we're going to try again.
Right. And this is the tricky thing, is that these politicians have little recourse, and it's a question of how many times is the old man going to have to be taught the lesson before because the judges in some of these districts and circuits let legislatures get away with this sort of thing, where they'll pass laws that like, come on, right? You don't need a law degree to read Bruin and then look at this and go, this is like exactly what Bruin said you can't do. Like you don't even have to be smart, right, to figure that out. And that the legislatures will do it, and then it'll string up lawsuits for months. New York's done it.
Are you kidding me?
Months if you're lucky. Yeah. And if not years and hundreds of thousands, if not millions of dollars get spent on these things, and then the ruling comes down like Bruin slapped down New York's permitting scheme, right? And what does New York do immediately in response? The exact thing the Supreme Court said they can't, and it starts all over again. So hopefully,
I thank God for the taxpayer. Because without them, this would not be possible.
Right.
But yeah, so moving on, there's some good Joes out there. So that's what the point you made. Nevada governor vetoed some gun control. Good old Joe Lombardo. He on Wednesday vetoed 3 gun control bills that attempted to increase the age to possess certain firearms and restrict who can obtain them. I will not support legislation that infringes on the constitutional rights of Nevadans, Lombardo said in a statement. Much of the legislation I vetoed today is in direct conflict with legal precedent and established constitutional protections. Therefore, I cannot support them.
There was a homemade gun ban, also a part of the package that he vetoed, and I forget his exact language, but he essentially said that he will not sign any legislation that restricts somebody's right to manufacture their own firearm. And I was like, okay, that's really cool.
Pretty big, yeah.
Pretty big to hear any politician say.
Right.
And of course, it's Nevada, so that's sort of what you would expect.
Well, and this is also a CNN article we're reading, so that they of course make sure we know the exact time to the minute since the last mass casualty incident, which is I guess just how we are measuring time now,
right?
Right, like instead of
guns are the topic. So how many mass shootings has it been since the last one?
Right. So instead of measuring years since, I don't know, the coming of Christ, like we tended to do, we're doing like the Japanese Meiji thing, where it's just like, how long has it been since our last news emperor? Like in the Parkland era, 3rd year, 16th day, 8th hour. But yeah, this is. Among the bills vetoed Wednesday, one measure aims to increase the age requirement to possess semi-automatic shotguns or rifles from 18 to 21 and make it unlawful to help a person younger than 21 obtain such firearms. Members of the armed forces and law enforcement officers would be exempted from the age requirement for no reason. Then
helping people under 21 acquire them, that's a big stinky.
Yeah. Dad. Another measure aims to ban so-called ghost guns, which are untraceable, self-assembled firearms, by prohibiting the sale or purchase of unfinished frames or receivers. It will also restrict the possession of firearms within 100 feet of an election site after threats against election workers surged in the wake of the 2020 election. The third measure would bar those who have been convicted of a violent hate crime or attempting to commit a hate crime from possessing firearms. Attempted. Okay. All right. Yeah, that's cool.
I will not hurt my brain by thinking.
Don't want it. Yep. That's that. All right.
That.
But hey, you know what we do? What I do want to hurt my brain by thinking about? Look, the power grid. All right. Listen to me. Okay, are you listening?
It's important. You listen up. We listen to this electronic device that's got microprocessors from China.
Yep. All right. Look. National security experts are warning that our aging power grid is more vulnerable than ever. People are shooting at the power grid. You know this. True.
They did that.
You know this. We've seen it.
A 50 caliber rifle and you aim for the cooling vents because these things are liquid cooled.
So in January marked the 3rd time a power station in North Carolina was damaged by gunfire Authorities are saying the attack it raises a new level of threat. This is new. Authorities are now checking the grid for vulnerabilities. They've identified 9 key substations, which you might live near. All right. And if these substations are attacked, power could be knocked out from coast to coast for up to 18 months. Imagine a blackout. No, it's less than not days, but weeks. Months, your life would be frozen in time.
You wouldn't be able to listen to this show. The most important thing.
The anime would be off.
We'd have to do the show through smoke signals, and that would be hard to make a rat spin in smoke signals.
Lights all over the country would go out. The rat would stop spinning, throwing people into total darkness. That's why having your own solar power is more important than ever. We got 4 Patriot Supply Company, new and improved solar generator. You could get the $20, the VIP. Use code FRN to get 10% off. This is 4 Patriots support the show. They sent me some hamburgers in the mail. Yeah, not that bad, dude, for 25 years. Pretty good for a 25-year hamburger, I have to say. Yeah, it was nice. It was nice of them to do that. But yeah, they don't really want you. They got a lot of different food options. The perfect survival starter kit, delicious protein-rich kits. You check it out. All right, new solar generator has twice the power of the previous model. This is the Mark II solar generator, great for the power grid collapse. All right, check them out. That's 4patriots.com. Use code FRN to get 10% off your first order. Thanks.
Indeed.
Guys, of course, we were just talking about SAF. They're a good organization. For nearly 50 years, the Second Amendment Foundation has been fighting for your Second Amendment rights. Having been involved in over 250 cases and an active litigation load of over 40 lawsuits, SAF has the expertise and experience necessary to fight government overreach and challenge unconstitutional laws. SAF is winning firearms freedoms one lawsuit at a time. To learn more or donate, go to bit.ly/SAFBusters or click the link down in the description. All right. This is great. Another one. That's all I have to say while I pull this up.
Another one.
Colorado company introduced smart guns. It's going to lower the number of firearm death. Okay.
Yeah, that'll do that. It'll certainly do that.
Where's the picture of it they had? It oh, here we go. Yeah, look at that.
Yeah, so this was another good funny one. So, this company has been working on it for I think longer than any of the other smart gun startups. Like they've at least been in business longer than any of them. Because probably the next
they usually only last I think possums have a longer lifespan.
Right, like these companies will stick around for like 4 years and then they'll embezzle a little bit of capital investment and then they're done.
And they wander off.
And so this one's been trying for a while, and the weird thing about this company is so far as I can tell,
is different from the one that straight stole your gun, right?
Correct. Yeah. So there's one that's like entirely funded by anti-gunners that stole my 3D printed Glock frame design and then put some fucking widgets in it and then called that their smart gun, and then they went to demo it to the press and it didn't work. That was really good. That was a good part. Like the dude lets up 3 or 4 rounds and the gun very visibly jams, and then they turn the camera straight at the ground. Like, can't look at that.
No, not here.
And then they put that footage. Then they put that footage out, which means that was their best footage of the day. So that's not this smart gun. This smart gun, the Colorado company, they've been working on for a long time.
11 years and 350 iterations.
Right. So at one point they were working on making a P90 into a smart gun, and then they were working on a Glock. But they sort of settled they needed their own from the ground up design, and so that's sort of what they've got here. And the weird thing is like you have to bear with me. So, of course, I have lots of things I could use to complain about the gun, but I want to try and stay positive just for the moment. I will crap on it a little bit in a second. But the idea that they were trying to corner with this gun is finding people who would literally not buy a gun if this gun didn't exist. And if you bear that in mind, the design decisions they made with this gun aren't that bad. However, this gun launched for pre-order. It's like a $2,000 sort of ordeal. It's a very, very expensive gun. The thing weighs like 2 pounds. It's extremely heavy for a handgun. Mm-hmm. It's like
it's got a Dell Inspiron in it.
it's almost 2 inches wide. It's incredible. It's a Desert Eagle sized gun, right? It's not like 1911 boat anchor. It's like Desert Eagle sized handgun. It's huge, and it sort of sits on its little charging dock, and It does have dual authentication, so it does fingerprint or facial recognition. So it's
the facial recognition part is kind of interesting. That's like the least insane way I've seen so far.
Right. And so it does seem to be very reliable, right? So every time they've had a media day where it's not necessarily, I mean, it is still in their own environment with their own test guns. It's not like you pick a gun at random and then you go through a sort of scenario or whatever. But like in their controlled envriment, at least, the gun consistently works with everybody who's come out to them to demo it.
It is a 5.7, right?
I know 9mm.
Oh, is it? Slide looks very 5.7. Okay.
Yeah, it does look very 5.7. So they have their own. They have their own sort of locking mechanism. It's essentially a linear recoiling barrel version of the Smith & Wesson style locking action. So Smith took the high power and then sort of made it so the cam bar doesn't go all the way through. It's just sort of all the way through. But they did that, but then it's linear action. So it's kind of novel. So
that is interesting.
So it forces a bar that connects the slide and barrel down into the frame. So it's kind of a neat thing.
Isn't that, did the Maxim 9 had some kind of interesting half slide thing too?
It may have. I'd have to go and check that. But they do have like a million different patents for this thing, and that the action of the gun is one of their patents as well, which is the only way that I understand how it works. Of course, looking at people shooting the thing, I was like, well, that's a direct blowback. But I think it looks like a direct blowback because this thing has like it's got height over bore. It's got
that bore's in the stratosphere.
It's got muzzle. It's got bore axis like an AR has height over bore. It's like 2 inches. It's massive. Yeah. And so the thing is like needlessly snappy. And they've got videos of like Navy SEALs shooting the thing. And it's like this looks like a very not that great gun to shoot. And of course they paid Ian from Forgotten Weapons to come out and say some glowing things about their gun. And they've sort of run the influencer marketing people. And so I did a thread on Twitter whenever they first announced this gun, and I shit all over the gun because like I was like the $2,000 for this, it's terrible. They marketing it as a home defense gun. It doesn't have a light on it, like a weapon light. Doesn't have a weapon light on it. It can't take a weapon light. It doesn't have an accessory rail or anything. There is no way to put a weapon light on this. When people were asking them about the weapon light, they said, but it can have an integrated laser. Which is
same thing.
Yeah, same thing. That works great. Like because with the weapon light, you could tell. Oh, is that my cat banging around, or is there somebody in the house? Meanwhile, with the laser, you just shoot at the movement because you're freaked out and you don't know what you're doing, and then the cat's dead. So,
well,
worst things can happen. But
listen, you just need. I'd always say, guys, you need to train your ears. All right, you don't need lights. You don't need lasers. You know what the noise is, and you shoot at it, and that's all. But you know one thing that I would like to point out, right? This company's being all careful. They're doing all their little iterations. They've got their, like this little home defense weapon the size of a toaster. And still, let's look at their little workshop. They got the cheap Harbor Freight blast cabinet. They didn't not only did they get a Harbor Freight blast cabinet, come on, man. They got the $120 blast cabinet, and you want me to take you serious? Like,
you're not professionals.
Come on,
amateurs.
Man. Like, I had that in my college dorm. That's what you're doing.
And of course, the interesting thing with smart guns, right? Because everybody's like there's a couple of camps, and I think most of us are past the camp. Like back in the day, it was electronics on a gun will never be safe. Nobody wants that. I think most people are past that point now, right? Because everybody's got electric optics on their guns. There's militaries that are issuing guns with electric optics that don't have backup irons. And of course, there's special forces operators that have been doing that since forever, where they just ditch their backup irons or make it so they have to get a wrench out to take their scope off to get the backup irons out because they are that sure their scope will work, right? Because batteries on guns, electronics on guns, much like electronics on cars, right? At one point in time, people were sure computers on cars, it will never work right. And then sure enough, it makes your car the most reliable thing you've ever driven around. And people think that that's not the case, but then you tell them to do you remember points distributors? Yeah, cars used to be absolute dog shit.
We actually had a discussion about that in our Discord, which, by the way, listener, you can join if you give me money. Go to Patreon, join our Discord, and we'll bully you. Yeah. But somebody was saying, because I have a 64 Corvair, and I said, oh, yeah, no, I put electronic ignition in it. Why would you do that? Why would you overcomplicate it like that?
And me and so much simpler.
Me and Ivan were like, are you insane?
Because points are terrible. Like the electronicization of stuff does tend to make it better once the electronics get good. Guns are there now, right?
I don't know about that. I still think that in terms of fuel injection, I like my throttle body injection.
Oh my! But so most people are over that hill to some extent. But the next hill that then people get to is, okay, but electronics in a gun, can't it be hacked? So there's two camps, right? It's electronics in a gun. It's not going to authenticate you because it's a smart gun, or can't this thing just be hacked? And that's the camp that I fell into. And, I of course dug through their patents, and they've got 5 patents for the electronic lockouts on this gun. All but one of them are purely mechanical sear interaction. So at the end of the day, maybe there's a series of interlocking things, things that lock it in or out that are electronic, but it is still a metal sear on a metal striker that drops it, and it's still a spring. They did have one patent for a design where it was a solenoid that fired the striker forward, and that's an insanely cool design. Super on board with that, but of course, the obvious issue with that sort of design is going to be so hard to get a solenoid to strike consistently. And this solenoids have magnets in them, right? Magnets, and that magnet is now jacking back and forth with your slide. So that's certainly not going to be great for it. So
although another instance where Walther was coolest first,
with the fry pistol gun,
the fry pistol that just straight up the firing pin is a solenoid.
Yeah.
But it did not work well. So and I have a smart gun. I have one of them Armatics things, and what that was a
single solenoid lockout,
single solenoid transfer bar lockout, which was defeated by putting another magment next to the
And so this smart gun. And the name of it's escaping me currently, but
BioFire is the company.
The BioFire smart gun. The simplest of their electronic lockouts has 3 solenoids that that act in opposition to each other. So one magnet would make the other one start working. So certainly you can't just use a magnet waved over the gun to make it do the different. And I think in all of their patents, the disconnector on the gun is a solenoid, which is really cool. But then that sort of made my mind start thinking, how hard would it be to make this thing into a machine gun without without making these sort of alterations that the ATF would say that those alterations themselves are the machine gun. So is there some amount of electronic tomfoolery you can do with this gun? Like if you're cool like me, right? You were modding
MOSFET.
Right, you were modding your 360 controllers back in the day to pull the trigger really fast for you, so that you could scum around with the FAL and M14.
Right.
And so, how long until somebody mods the trigger on this thing? They claim it's impossible, but looking at their looking at the designs, the only way that they could claim that's impossible is if they're injection molding the wiring into the body of this gun.
Yeah, which they're not.
It would be really impressive if they did. I'd be blown away because that's impressive, but I doubt it.
Yeah, so they're not. The thing is that the sear relationship on a gun, on a handgun, there's not enough room to do anything really wild and cool, I think is what you're saying.
Right.
It's everything that you could do because of the way a sear relationship functions is mechanically defeatable.
Right. And they all but one of their patents uses a straight up Glock style transfer bar that interacts with the cruciform sear striker relationship is just like you'd see in a Glock. Right. And it's got,
I don't think the object of this is to prevent the gun from ever being fired. I think the object is to provide for this insane situation where there's a battlefield pickup and someone takes your gun, which, whatever.
Or the crux of their marketing, right? The intersection of their marketing is people who would never buy a gun because they're scared of them, and they need a gun that's quote unquote extra safe, and then kids in the house.
Yeah,
and then of course the way they advertise this is they just have the gun on display in the middle of the house with the kids playing in the floor right next to it. And I'm like, dude, what the fuck is this?
Yeah, it's you're going a little too hard.
And then the weird thing is the anti-gun groups
with the BioFire smart pistol, just give it to your kid. Who cares?
Just give it to your kid. It's fine.
Who cares?
Leave it loaded. It's fun. And the anti-gun groups were then like saying, "Oh, we love the fact that smart guns are coming to the market, and it's good, and we'll continue to watch this development." The pro-gun lobby said that smart guns are impossible, but see, clearly here they work. And then these people's advertising is just like people living guns all about the house while the kids play, and all of the gun owners are sitting there watching that, like, dude, what the fuck?
Like, wait. Hold on. Is this the future you want, liberals? Is this it?
I don't care how safe you make it. Probably not the smartest call.
Yeah. Shouldn't say I withdraw liberals. I mean anti-gunners. Not always the same thing. But anyway, last up, because the show's gone on long enough, and Sam is looking at me with disapproval. We have Patriot Patch Corporation. Patriot Patch Company is a good company because you know that. You know how? I'll tell you how. They get kicked off of social media just like you. And they
Just
support
like
the
me.
show just like you. They support the show. You can have promotional code TWIG10, TWIG10 to get the patch. Get the patch and join the Patch of the Month Club. It's recommended. Every month automatically you're going to get a funny little morale patch. You're not going to know what's going to come, but you're going to get a nice little sticker with the hand-drawn little art and the patch, which is the good PVC, very thick and juicy. And also, just check out their patch catalog. You'll find a lot of cool things in there. Let's check out the new pre-orders. Never mind. Let's see. Faith patches, Patriot ammunition patches, pop culture patches. Let's take a look at that. Yeah, a lot of cool stuff. Born to Chill. That we have to talk to that snowman about the length of his barrel on that 5.56 gun.
True. That's not. There's nothing chill about that.
That's not going to be acceptable. But yeah, anyway, guys, patriotpatch.co. They are a long time. I think they were the first supporter of this channel. So go ahead and buy the product. Promotional code TWIG10. Do what you got to do. Well, anyways, guys, thanks so much for coming in. We'll be coming at you real soon. And yes, I am working on those videos that we discussed.
Big.
Until next time, we will see you next time.
Rat Squad moving out.